All right, so we now delve into a conversation we have been having this morning regarding the media and elections. In studio, I have Victor Bwire, Director of Programs at the Media Council of Kenya, as well as Susan Auma, who is a media and governance consultant. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
So let me begin by asking you what we're asking our viewers this morning. Bwire, what would you want to see the media do differently in the election coverage?
Thank you. One, quickly, because it's a discussion we have been having for the last 2 weeks, and media has been asking themselves that this time again we have been put on spot in the sense of how we managed and did with quite a number of things, including one, giving space, for example, to people with special needs. I mean, being gender sensitive, those were things that came out largely, that we continue to perpetuate the idea of dominant candidates, right, and to the expense of other candidates who are equally deserving. So those are things that came out. We continued giving the narrative of strongholds, again, strongholds and stronghold branding regions to be strongholds of whichever party. Which, again, looking at the voting, then it proved some of the terminologies wrong. So those are the kind of issues. Then obviously the issue of over trusting others, in this case other institutions, where, again, something that has come up big time is the issue of the release of results. Right. That we depend too much on IBC to the extent that when their results were not forthcoming, then media was also unable to do the same. So those are things that have largely come out.
And we'll be discussing them individually, one by one. But Susan, what would you like to see differently this time?
Thank you so much to invite me to the show once more. I must say, first of all, I have to say that the media need to look at where we are today, and they need to do a self-critique of themselves. What didn't you people do? And of course, just like the Chief Justice said, election is not an event, but it's a process. How well did we participate in the process? Do we even understand these processes? Can we start looking at them one by one? And then how do we participate in them? Because I think in the last election, we focused so much on the result. We focused so much on the end product. We were so much excited to show who is leading, who is not leading, and then call them losers, the same way I've been seeing here headlines. They're not losers, they're just unsuccessful. Because I want to believe that before the Honorable Raila went to court, he was a loser in the media's term. And after he went there, he became, there's nobody who had won anywhere according to the Chief Justice or to the Supreme Court. So what I think the media needs to do a self-assessment, they need to do a self-critique, and then focus more on the process. Be the eyes of the people, be the voice of the people. Tell the people what they need to know. Because, and again, just like Victor is saying, and this challenge goes to them. I don't know during election whether they had deployed observers, because much as the law does not allow you to stream your own results to tally, but again, you could have had some links at the polling stations, each and every polling station, so that much as you're receiving the results from IBC or from returning officers, but since the results declared the polling station remains final, there was nothing wrong for you also to show as your parallel. Tallying, you've gotten this result as announced by the presiding officer from polling station 1, and you could as well have compared. And this would have saved us a lot. Probably wouldn't have gone to court because we'd have had some parallel tallying from the media. So
let's take a look at what the people themselves then have to say, because we've posed this same question to you and we're asking you, what would you like to see differently, the media do differently this time in terms of election coverage? Remember, the hashtag is Morning Express KTN. You can also tweet me directly at Michelle Ngele. We have Kenyan here, Atieno, saying capture pictures of party agents and IEBC Kenya officials signing the forms 34A and 34B and signed forms displayed at polling stations for public viewing. So do note some of these, Victor, because we'll be talking about how possible, or how practical it is to implement some of these issues. Lazarus Guda here says that the media must do their own tallying from the constituency center and stop concentrating on Githeriman shenanigans. And we also have Kenyan here again saying, stop concentrating on tuambie majina yako, ulikuja hapa saa ngapi, hii line inasonga. Those are useless questions in monitoring vote counting. We also have Omondi here saying media should review their content and reports before putting them on the screen. A very important point there that we'll be discussing. Clinton Otieno, it is simple. Redeem yourselves, stand for the truth, have your own tallying center, and convey results directly from the polling station. Sure. We'll continue taking more of your comments. Do keep them coming in. I'd seen one more here, very important. One of our viewers here saying forms 34A and 34B are public property. I do not understand why the media cannot show all of them to us on live television. So let's begin with those comments alone. And most of what people are saying this morning revolves around what you're saying, Susan. Media needs to have their own tallying center. Media needs to redeem themselves from the previous election. Let's come to you, Bwire. Why did the media not have their own tallying center during the August 8th election?
Thank you. I think it's one area of strategically a miscalculation, but miscalculation that was structured in a way of trusting. Just before the election, there were a lot of arrangements and discussions around how to ensure, because I think the 2007 and 8 thing has always lacked on our heads, where it was heard that the media was, while almost, if you look at the Kregler report, Waki report, all institutions were blamed for the 2000 police, media, and everybody. But whenever it comes now to election 2013, 2017, it's always the media that is singled out to be the institution that fueled the 2007 whatever. So that has always been, whenever you go to meetings, whenever you see it, you say, we don't want media to do the same thing they did in 2007. Right. So that has, we have refused to move, and that has really affected the way we think. And because I remember when we were attending those meetings of planning, everybody would raise those things. And subsequently, you would see most of the administrative codes and instructions that came was that if media is going to, if you are going to stream live results, your licenses will be cancelled, you'll be arrested. Those threats became real. Given that media is also owned by investors who are very sensitive, and look at those meetings that I've been saying about eminent persons, about the private sector and the peace messages. Who are involved? Is the media owners, is the media investors and themselves. So that also became a very intimidating environment for most of the journalists of what they could do. So you'd see in the Media Council regulations, in the CA regulations, that results were only to be picked from IBC. Right. And that was now how we went, having prepared media to pick, but which seems to have been a flop.
Absolutely.
So I think as we prepare for other elections, including by-elections that might come, and we need to start thinking about how do we engage the authorities to start trusting media, that even when they're allowed to do their own tallying, they can still give credible results that people can do. Right. So to me, it's credibility, because why are people so sensitive about media relaying results is the issue of credibility. Right. That do we trust media enough to be given this information? And, So I think there's an issue of credibility that we must start building, because the last, one of the last opinion poll early this year showed that media had dropped as the most trusted institution to number 3. Right. Remember, we were leading. Now, even religious leaders in the last period were... that's one of the comments that was said here, that we must relook at ourselves as an institution. Do we still have the trust that people used to have in us, so that when they're making these laws, we can be trusted that we can do our own tally?
Right, but then, Susan, what then is to change in this election? Because the very same circumstances Victor is describing, because, our media houses are still owned by the same people who owned them during the August 8th general election, the same seemingly toxic environment, for journalists, especially those who are airing very bold stories, still continues. So how then do we begin making that change?
Yeah, but Michelle, we have also state media. At least we have is it Voice of what? KBC.
We have the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation.
Yeah, KBC, okay. We've got KBC. And as a state media, which is all by taxpayers' money, at least it would have done that function. And then these other private medias, which have got maybe interested in investors with invested interest, then could have borrowed, you know, streaming from them. That could still go on. What I do not agree with Victor is that probably they could not trust it, and the fact that you are supposed to get results from IBC. Okay, it's IBC who are supposed to officialize the results. But like I said, this time round, after that amendment, they said that results announced at the polling station remains final. To me, I thought it was a very big leeway for the media to stream their own results, because what would have happened? You get results as announced at the polling station. Once the presiding officer has announced the results, it becomes official. That's IBC. And you can be able to have your own tallying center somewhere and stream it. Well, instead of just basing on the hearsay, oh, what has this person gotten? I don't know. What has this person gotten? Oh, they're still counting, they're still doing ABCD. So I think the media, again, the people's expectation was that things were going to be okay this time round, that media was going to help them to verify the results. And I think that was the outcry. Even weeks preceding the election, I think we kept on saying, media, you need to be independent in this thing, you need to work with us, let everything be done in a very transparent manner. And how do we get things done transparent when we don't have an independent media? So, but this time around, I think I also must commend media, because much as the owners are still the same, but we could see in terms of coverage, it did not just come out, you know, those political leaning were not pronounced as has been before. Because even after looking at even the Supreme Court ruling, I think it's been a little bit fair in terms of coverage this side and that side, because we'll say that 80% of media ownership, if we were to affiliate this country, the way people vote, you know, my name is Auma, so basically someone you look at Auma and know Auma will vote in NASA. Yeah? Your name is Ngela, I don't know where you'll be voting. But we saw some sort of a little bit of balance there. So how I wish this time round, you just need to know that people will be depending on you, because people consume resource as given by you. And again, if you don't step in, the social media will take over your space. I've been on record here saying that social media is going to take over your space. And you see them, they will even stream things which are alarmist. You just hear say, and this one can really divide this country. And so follow the process. And do that. Take us through the process. I know there could be some legal obstacles. You remember even when NASA said they wanted to have their own tallying center. Any politician like me, I vowed and I had my own tallying center because I have my agents there. Much as I could not announce myself based on the figures I was getting, I have to abide to what IBC says. But it will give you kind of an idea where you are, how you're doing, you know, where you,
and what that means. But of course, we have to get into the logistics of how possible this is. And like Victor mentioned, this was a clear directive from IBC that media houses should not, you know, at any point air results from their own tallying centers. Everything should come from the IBC. But now, looking at the Supreme Court verdict, which has by and large pointed an accusing finger at IBC for bungling these elections. We've seen IBC making a few, you know, changes, internal cleanup. We would expect them, you know, in this bid to redeem themselves, then they should give media the leeway to this time have their own independent tallying center. But Victor, what does that entail? Does it mean that all the media houses need to have their own tallying centers, or does it mean the media comes together the way we saw them in the presidential debate and have one overall tallying center?
I think, thank you, and you got me. And this is something I've publicly said, I've even written for Standard on the same. That media, we are operating as if we are in the 1970s. We have not come to the reality that the economies of scale does not allow some of the things we want to do. For example, this time, each of us, Standard had 290 reporters or correspondents. Nation had 290. Royal Media had 290. Each of them who eventually never helped us to get even the result. How do we look at the economies of scale and media as a team come together and do some of these things as an industry? I mean, there's no competition in results. There's no exclusive news story on results. So media must also start thinking that how do we utilize the resources we have in this environment? There are things we can do jointly, like do a joint tallying center or whatever we call, and we'll share the results.
Right.
I mean, instead of having people all over the country who are not helping us in any way, the 600 and some, almost 700 people that media sent to the field never gave us anything that we are complaining about. So media, we must also start thinking as an industry that there are things that we must do in terms of fitting both the bill and the public expectation.
Right.
So that's one thing that, that's a discussion. Two, the elephant in the room, as my friend John Gachi would say, is the issue of bedded journalists. That we have also among ourselves, people who are bedded, not even embedded, we are bedded with whatever political parties. And we are moved away from being watchdogs. We are either now guard dogs or lap dogs. We are not doing the work we are doing.
Right.
I mean, it matters to us what I get, what my tribe gets, more than the public good that a journalist ought to do. So we must also start addressing some of these issues.
But why is it that issues of bedded journalists come up? Because also one of our viewers said media needs to review the reports before they go on air. But we all know it's, it's procedure. I do not own this media house. I cannot go to the field, bring footage and put it on air. Somebody must be accountable. Somebody must vet this footage. So even if I am pro one political side, as soon as it gets to the editor, he should be able to decide what is the leaning of the story. Is it balanced enough? So what does that point to in terms of our media houses?
One, that we have a focus, and I've said this before, most of us, media support groups, donors, and have focused so much on the journalists. And we forget a very serious group in between. One, the sub-editors or program controllers, and the editors. We always think the problem is the correspondents, is the journalists. We never address the issue of where are our editors, for example, that's independent and professional. We must ask those questions. Because I see, poor journalists like me is struggling at 8 filing stories, they say, but sometimes journalists are equally frustrated. So these are discussions that we must have among even our editors to start asking, do we have independent professional editors whose heart is public interest? Or do we have, the problem is also at that level where we have bedded editors and embedded editors?
Right. Now,
maybe, Michelle, the question is, how do we pay? How do we remunerate these journalists, these reporters? Because my experience in the campaign was that apparently the media or those reporters down there, they have their own definition on who is the newsmaker. And you see, once a campaign period has been declared, everybody is a candidate. So there, they will only go to field stories where they think there's a big name. And most of those names are the incumbents. Because why? They will end up with something. Right. So you see, there's so many things that really happened that the media is not able to tell us apart from the Githeri man. And that's why I agree with the viewer who is saying, why are you telling us about the Githeri man, the queue, how the queue is long? And like in my county, you had cases where people were being found in possession of ballot papers. Did you hear such a story? Where was the media? And like he says, you had deployed over 290 officers, like standard reporters and what. Where were they when these stories are happening? Instead, they'll want to follow who is this incumbent going to vote, be it a governor, be it a senator. And you see, in their way, in their mind, they had already made up a decision who is winning this election, to me, which is really unfair. So the word there is professionalism. How are we ensuring that our officers down there, our reporters down there are professional in their undertakings? Because in an election, everybody, once you're a candidate, you're a candidate. And you can become a source of information. So we have so many people who would have raised these issues, but the media was not paying attention to them. So then what happened? So I think this time round, given that these matters is sensitive, especially this presidential rerun or fresh election, the people are calling it, I would say, Michelle, let these people go there and give fair coverage. Let put their ears on the ground and let them talk to the people, because people will be affected. Or else we'll end up with another Supreme Court, end up with another rerun, another Supreme Court.
And let's all agree we are
like
tired and we want the country
exactly.
to move on.
So we need to do it better.
So one of our viewers here, Chair Fung, very interesting name, says, media needs to be fair in reporting the truth the way it is. You have been biased for far too long. one of the things that came out in terms of media coverage during and after the August 8th elections was the aftermath after IBC declared President Uhuru Kenyatta winner of that election. And the media was still running, you know, with Githeriman and a few other stories. But there were atrocities that were being committed in various parts, in Mathare, in Kibera, somewhere in Kisumu. And the media took quite a while to bring this out, understandably, because there was a bit of a big debate among the media. What did we learn from the 2007 situation? We were largely blamed for the outcome of the 2007 general election. How tricky was this for the media, Victor, this time? And in terms of, you know, because on one side said the media should not show this violence because it will set a trend across the country. And others said if the media is independent and stands for the truth, then it should show this violence going on in the country. Where do we draw that line?
Thank you. Again, a very tricky situation for the media. I know, and I've had colleagues talk. I belong to a lot of WhatsApp groups, journalists WhatsApp groups, and much of what I see there, I know colleagues fought in the newsrooms in terms of just
It was a very difficult situation
for everybody. So that's why I say, having worked now, that it's not easy as people think outside. That just simple where journalists say, we'll not cut this story and that. People go through a process. People fight. People shout at each other for them to carry or not to carry a story. So it was a very difficult period for the media. I understand, I mean, in terms of both in-house politics and the in-house structural things that hindered some of the journalists. By the time decisions are being made to release journalists to go undercover, it had taken quite some time. So it was purely a professional process of people saying, should we cover it, should we not cover it? By the time KTN decided that we are sending people to Kibera, it was not just a simple thing that an editor woke up and sent. So it took a lot of time, yes. So that was one of the challenges. The other challenge was purely the practical nature of the assignment. Because even when the media was deployed to the centers, again, it met the challenges of security agents again, who are also not very allowing, journalists to. So people had to fight to get space to report. I mean, looking at that, it became even impossible for people to go to places like Mathare at a physical level. It's not that media refused, but at some stage, yes, you want to sacrifice, you want to take the truth, but sometimes it became practically impossible.
It's always a rule that your life is more important.
Yes. So in Kibera, we saw Duncan being arrested while trying. In Kisumu, they arrested citizen crew. So it's, again, to me, while I accept that they could have done more, but there are also structural challenges that sometimes are impossible, make it impossible for media to access and report. Remember, like the TV crews, by the time you go with an OB van and the rest and the thing, it's quite, the security is already condoned the area off. So sometimes it's not that media decides that we are not carrying this because it's not more important. But sometimes we want to, yes, but the practical things that hinder us doing it. But yes, we could have done more. I know, again, there's still controversies, people died, but the numbers and the rest again. So that also the relationship with media and sources must also be looked at. That when somebody tells you 100 people have died here, and maybe it's 2, how do you verify and confirm? You know, sometimes it also becomes a challenge for media because, if you look at most of our regulations, they say if there is a crime, for example, you confirm with the police who will give you the official number. But the police were also unfortunate. So media had this information. They were sharing it on their WhatsApps. I could see people saying we have had this. But now to go on air and say this had happened without, became also a challenge. Some of them. Some of the journalists filed the stories, but at a decision-making level, the agenda has said this can't run.
All right, so I'll give you a word on that, Susan, in just a moment, because even as we put the IBC on the spotlight, you know, the Supreme Court on the spotlight as independent institutions, media is the fourth arm of government, so to speak. Its credibility or, you know, confidence among citizens has been tampered with in a way, and so media does need to redeem itself in a way. So I'll give you a word on that, Susan. But let's head over to Mombasa and speak to our reporter, Francis Mtalaki, and on a very interesting twist of events in Mombasa. So, Mtalaki, 2 guys have been found dancing naked on the streets after stealing a car. You never